This is Motovation. I'm Laurie Kingwell.
And I'm Krissy Vann. We're two dreamers on two wheels inspired by our community.
And celebrating the voices we're just lucky enough to discover along the ride. So if not already, like, subscribe, follow along, do what you gotta do to not miss an episode.
Today, we're talking about the hell that is exhaustion. When you're running on fumes with no pit stop in sight, you might think you can just muscle through it, but ignoring the signs is like riding your motorcycle hard without checking your gauges. You'll push and push right up until you hit a wall, mentally, physically, or both. Exhaustion completely messes with you. Your focus fades, your temper could flare, and suddenly even the smallest tasks feel like a brutal uphill grind. So what can you do when proper rest isn't an option? Sometimes you've got to pull over briefly, those micro breaks can help cool the engine, or maybe it's about fueling smarter. We'll get into all of that today and talk about what the rough ride of exhaustion can really do to you. This is the Motovation.
This episode, I think, is really going to be more geared to we see you, we feel you, and you're not alone in it. Because I think this time of the year, exceptionally so, everybody in their own right is feeling more tired than usual, right? You got the weather, the lack of sunshine, all those different components that already take a bit of a hit to your system to want to power down. And there's a certain level too where we do have those different seasons, and this is a season where it is more powering down to some extent. But then we also have that hustle culture where more, do. Everyone's feeling stressed politically, financially, all those things. And then you've got those areas added for quite a few people, and we're in those boats at this very moment in our own way, Krissy and I. And you might have a newborn baby, and that's happening. And whether you like it or not, you're getting up all through the night and then at the demand all through the day. And then maybe you have a newborn and other kids. And maybe you are a parent and you work full time and then you come home and you're doing all of that. Or you're an entrepreneur and you're looking for funding for your business and this is crunch time. Or you've got something physical happening and that physical ailment or illness is taking its toll on you, but then life is still happening. Or you're in the boat where you've committed to something and a goal that you've set and you have deadlines and timelines that aren't necessarily movable, or they're only movable to a certain extent. But it's happening and there's no way necessarily to pump the brakes or carve out as much space and time for rest as you ideally need, because it is happening. And what we really kind of want to talk about today is, yes, some tips and some reminders, some real loving, gentle reminders. But I know that I wanted to really talk about what a mind fuck it is. I'm really fucking tired. In this moment, last night I called Krissy or left a message and was like, hey, can we pivot on the topic we're going to talk about? I'm so exhausted in my body and in my brain that I'm in this space where my brain's playing even tricks on me. My mind's playing tricks on me. And when I say tricks on me, it's I start to have almost paranoid thoughts. I start to think up things and ruminate suddenly a lot easier. And I'm kind of going whoa, you are making up stories from the most smallest piece of information. But when you're in a state of exhaustion, your brain is going, okay, I'm going to take whatever resources I can and keep you as safe as I can. I'm going to look for danger anywhere I can possibly find it. But it feels so very real. And then you feel this, my personal experience, the jittery experience, because your nervous system feels quite shot. And all of a sudden, I feel very hyper but exhausted all at the same time. And that's super weird when you're in conversation with people, especially in a professional setting. Like I had a meeting yesterday with a neuropsychologist for work related that I had to relay things from a family that I work with. And I was so exhausted. I could barely make layman's sense going in. And I just was like, and I'm going to talk to a neuropsychologist. So I was just really honest. I was like, this is where I'm at. And they were like, that's awesome. I know what I'm working with. This is great. Rather than trying to sound a certain way and pull it together, I was just like, look, this is what I'm bringing to the table in this very moment. And here is why. But I think when we get more honest and we have more honest conversations of where we're at, it's surprising how much that pressure and how much that survival mechanism kind of the volume does turn down. And I think that's why it's important that we kind of talk out loud today about our own experience. So you might find yourself in it, or relating to it, or if you're finding it down the line and you're like, that's what's going on for me. Even just the physical things of wanting to binge eat. I'm ravenously, like you think I was a raccoon in those cupboards right now. And I know what's happening. But it's so, the feeling and the pull factors are so intense. It's very, very challenging to manage. But I'm on a timeline to doing something that means a lot to myself. And it just so happens the intensity of the workload just increased in a big, huge way, and it will for the next 2 months. So I know that the end is near, but it doesn't change the fact that I'm running on very low fuel at high velocities. And that doesn't necessarily match up for a good outcome. But that's where we're at sometimes in our lives. And it's really, really hard. And I think it's not an excuse, that kind of hustle culture is like, I don't want to hear excuses here. But like, we have to talk about like what the impact and how that experience is, so we can offer ourselves some real grace as to what we're experiencing. Because that also creates a bit more of a crack to see what are the micro steps I can take, and where is the slight care and rest I can carve out. But that's harder to do when we're hard on ourselves or feeling like we should be doing better, because when we look around, it seems like everyone else is doing better.
Yeah, you can, if you're looking for the evidence, you will find it, and it'll be right in front of your face. When you sent that voice note yesterday, I had a couple of thoughts of my reflections with exhaustion. And it's interesting because Laurie and I definitely am not as running on empty as she is, but it's because my body has forced me to take the rest. And to her point about giving grace, I've had such a struggle with that, which I'll get to that saga in a moment, because I also feel like it's a good PSA for other women using birth control that not enough people talk about. But if I reverse to, a few weeks forward of last year, so by the time I was in April or May, I can think about the time I was really running on fucking fumes and had nothing left to give. And to your point, the demands of life don't stop. And you also have that tremendous pressure of there's no catch basin here. I don't have a huge red button that I can stop the conveyor belt of life. And if you followed the podcast, it was on the heels of my marriage basically coming to a very abrupt, blindsiding end, and a lot of complicated factors around that. I mean, let's face it, anybody going through a divorce, there's complications, but I was dealing with some heavy shit from the mental health side with my partner. And it was the first time in my life I really struggled exceptionally with sleep. Obviously, my body was in such a stressful state. And I actually distinctly remember, and I'm glad you mentioned it off the top, the mums out there, because I remember messaging our friend Haley, who's got 2 little babes and toddlers in action at the same time. And I was like, I don't know how you did it. And I also wish I was so much more supportive when you were in the depths of exhaustion, because I love how you described how your brain starts to essentially almost feed on itself on those negative circuitry patterns that we have when you're in that state. Because I had my tools that I'm equipped with, but my access to them also felt like there was an added barrier I had to go through. You're just so fucking exhausted and tired. The thought of even dragging yourself out of it seems like an impossibility a lot of the time. And if you're running on empty for that long, I mean, the opposite from yourself. I wasn't ravenous in the cupboards. I wasn't eating, which again was stress at the time, but I lost an insane amount of weight for my body. Like my happy land that my body likes to live in, whether it's muscular me or fluffier me, is like in those 130s range. And I had dropped at times like well over 10 pounds. And on my frame, that's significant, right? And so your body being at that sense of depletion, and then you start losing the added tools that are so important for our foundations, can be such a tough combination to crawl out of. And I think to Laurie's point, it's good to say you don't feel alone, because in that time period, I remember life was going by, and in my sector, it's very content that's front facing and public. And so you're seeing people churn every day. And I'm like, I feel like I'm walking through mud, but I have to do this shit. So what do I do? How do I prioritize myself? Then you fast forward to Laurie and I kind of walking in tandem into the new year. It's 2025. I have new goals. I'm going to conquer the world. And I had so many breaks that I had to take last year mentally that I was like, this is where I make up for all that lost time, which I shouldn't even view that way. It was necessary fucking time to fuel myself in my healing journey. But then my body went on fucking remix. And this is where I'm like, birth control PSA. So I got an IUD at the end of August, and everyone talks about their different insertion experiences. I was one of the women where it was, now that I look at it, it was a pretty traumatic insertion. It was 40 minutes. I hadn't taken any. Yeah. We had to keep attempting over and over again because my cervix like wouldn't allow it. And so then they get like the other speculum that's like even bigger, and they're cranking you more. And it was causing contractions every time too. So your uterus is spasming the entire time. Me and this doctor, I was like yoga breathing, because she's like, we can send you home and give you a medication that will like relax the cervix basically. Right. And this is much more common for women that haven't had a baby. So everything is just kind of like foreign to your system as it's happening. Anywho, eventually we get it in. I honestly thought the doctor was going to cry. She called me the next day personally and was like, are you okay? I thought about you all night. And I was like, yeah, surprisingly, after
she was like, malpractice. She's like, I thought about you all night. Are you alive, girl?
It was stressful. It was so fucking
I've never
stressful.
actually heard someone go through that long of an experience getting an IUD.
Yeah. Well,
here we are.
Fun. So fast forward, and like every month I was just kind of like, oh, I guess they say it takes a while for your body to regulate, but I equated it. I was like, my body doesn't really feel like mine at this point. It's just been on remix, but they say you get spotting, you get this, etc. So I was like, maybe this is all part of it. In the beginning of December, had like a brutal period to start the year. This was December 31st. And get through that. And it was very prolonged. And I was like, I'm pretty sure that all blood volume in my body has left the building. And then I had a couple days, January 13th, I was back on the train again. And it is February 4th. And I've been bleeding ever since. So as this has been going on, I've also felt like I've been crazy bloated I just know my fucking body. And I was like, something is not right. So I finally had an ultrasound, and it turns out my IUD is, all I know right now is lopsided, but it's in there and they can see it, because I went down the rabbit hole, not out of fear. I was just deeply curious, because it can perforate the uterine wall and travel in your body. And there were stories and studies. I was reading the research papers of women where they do the ultrasound, can't find it, do an x-ray, can't find it. So they say to the woman, oh, like, it must have expelled. And even my doctor said that to me originally. And I was like, how do you not notice that your IUD expelled? Yeah. Right? You would think a piece of pokey plastic, you might notice.
You'd feel it. Yeah. Yeah. Or see like, what's that in my pee?
Right? But apparently, like if you have a heavier period, etc., that can happen and you not notice. And I was kind of looking at her being like, I'm pretty sure I'd know. But they found people that then went for a different procedure later down the line, their IUD in the back of their shoulder, like it like travels in the body. My
Sorry, what?
point, women's health is like so understudied.
I was going to make a joke last night and be like, I was going to tell you to check your back molar for it as a joke. And then you're like, could be in your shoulder. Could be. And I was like, maybe it could be in your molar, turns out.
So now I'm like, little PSA, these things happen. And as soon as I went in the rabbit hole, I was like, oh, hormones are clearly out of whack. It's not normal to be bleeding for almost a month straight. With like a couple days in between, I've been fucking exhausted. And it just hits me. And I'm such an energetic person generally. And I was like, I'm just so fucking tired. The one day I went to bed at 8:30 p.m. I didn't wake up until 8 a.m. and I made it to 10:30. And I was like, I have to take a nap. But then my brain was beating myself up, being like, this is ridiculous. Why the fuck are you taking a nap? Like, you have to give yourself grace in those moments. But it's also, I get so frustrated, especially if it's my body slowing me down. And then to your point of irrational thought, I almost get more pissed off at myself because in the grand scheme of things, I have this healthy little avatar that's walking around the world. And this is really a minor self-induced inconvenience. Like, I've chosen to put this foreign entity in my body. My body has had some unhappiness with it. There are people that go through all sorts of different things. I'm like, just be grateful that you get to have the rest. I don't have little children that are running around that I have to take care of at the same time. I can cocoon my ass and have this fucking nap. But instead, the entire time I'm trying to fall asleep. I'm like, you shouldn't be doing this. You should be doing this, that, the other. And also a full Cirque du Soleil acrobatic show, song and dance, jazz hands.
Yeah. And when we put ourselves through those mental acrobatics, we end up actually doing that in those small micro moments where we actually have, like you said, opportunity just to be. And it might look like you're doing it in the car when you're driving quietly by yourself, or you lay your head down on that pillow for the night and you're going over all the things you didn't do right that day or should have done or what you're going to need to do. Whatever it is that you're doing, if you're in grief, right? You're like, I should be over this right now. I shouldn't feel this way any longer. Like, that's another component that I think is really important that I didn't mention at the start. I'm actually in my studies right now in the course of grief. Obviously, as well, if you've been a listener, you know that I've had extensive experience with grief over the last 5 years. And so I was even studying it prior. So it's great in the sense where this isn't new information completely to me, but there is so many helpful things. Even just like, we don't even understand disenfranchised grief. That would look like something in regards to even divorces. And right, like, it's like, now aren't you going to get over it? And then we work against ourselves and allowing a natural process to take place where our system and our soul and our brain and all of it is trying to communicate to us and help us out. And in even those moments when we don't necessarily have a choice as to how much time we give it, when we have those little micro moments, we're spiraling in the thought patterns of why we're wrong in the way that our body and our brain and everything's trying to communicate to us. It sounds so insane, but it's so very real. And again, that's a big part of culture, right? And it's a big part too, where everyone else is like, well, I don't have time. I'm already drowning in my world. I don't have time for your world. And yes, to a certain extent, like we've talked about in the episode that we did in September with mine, where I had to be like closed for business, where I was like, I got to put my oxygen mask on beforehand. Yes. But when we live also in really individualized cultures where me, myself, and I, not my problem, that's where we're really missing this real opportunity to, like you said, even not that this is your mindset because it's so far from it, Krissy, but an example, even in a way that we don't realize is, like you said, I just wish I had a little bit more empathy for Haley's situation. Like, you always considered it. It was never lost upon you. You always showed deep love. But I think when you were in the physical experience of exhaustion, it, like anything, when we're in those experiences, it helps us form a deeper level of empathy. And so that's really true. This is really true about what this episode is as well, is just kind of, oftentimes it means so much just to hear you're not alone in this. And for somebody to say, I can see what you're putting in. You know, I recognize that you might not be able to fully stop right now, or you have to make it through on the other side. You know, where can I help you pause? Where can I, can it just sometimes being there to hear someone out loud say, like, I'm so fucking tired. Like, sometimes just getting to say it. And, it's not nothing. And the other part I want to speak to is, this is where I think it's really important, where we come back to that why. Is if you're going to be putting this kind of energy into something, or wherever it is that you're at, does this really mean something to you? Are you putting this much energy in because you want the status of something, or you want to have what they have because they have it and that they look like they're happy? So if I just have that, then I'll be happy. And I'm putting all this energy into, climbing this mountain. And then I realize I don't even like this mountain. This mountain's not even my mountain. And I just, fuck me. I'm at the top. Yeah. Like, you might be a swimmer. You might be a hiker. You might be a trail walk. Like, I think you, more than anything, is asking yourself, is the energy that is being required of you right now being put into things that really mean something to you? Because I tell you, on the days, which is almost every day right now, currently, that I'm waking up and I'm like, okay, you're going to do today. You're going to do today. And you're going to, like, you will get on the other side of it. You just keep moving. You just keep moving. And we'll get a little, or very soon here, to some of the things of like why the micro moments and what that can actually look like are so important. But I really want to highlight the why, because that is what is I'm not pushing myself. I have a pull factor. I'm being pulled to something that means so much to me in what I see and always have seen for myself, and what I just know is part of the process that is going to be asked of me, and that I am capable so long as I believe myself to be. But that's also working within reality as well. But that much of it is mind over matter at times. And so long as there's a certain level of like temporariness of it, the certain level you're asking of yourself to then take a little recoup. And then there'll be a time where I'll ask just as much of myself again. But my main point is the why. Because I think a lot of us are pushing ourselves to goals that may not be ours, but have been told that they equate happiness, or that they should be ours. And we've never really slowed down enough to ask ourselves of like, it's not that's kind of too where it's like, what are you hustling for?
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like it's a common theme of what we even started Motovation around. That you and I both recognized that there is another way, and that's something to get so deeply curious about, because so much of what we do, especially in the early stages of our life, and for some people continue to repeat the patterns throughout their lives, is exactly that, striving toward things that they feel immense pressure to achieve without ever pausing to think, why is that the goal? Well, because everything around me told me that that's what I should do for happiness. Like, happiness is this destination, without the understanding that happiness is never the goal. You can have moments of pure contentment, pure joy, but happiness is a fleeting experience that you get to go through, and it will ebb and flow in and out of your life. You don't get to just reach the proverbial mountain of happiness and then you're there. But even just coming off the heels of a new year and to the point of the vision boards and the resolutions and the things we see for ourselves, I think people almost audit coming out of a year and then reflect and think, well, this didn't make me happy, and this, and this, and if I just had this. And it's not to say that goals and such are wrong, but I'm just kind of like, I feel like people just have this pressure, and that the more I produce and the more I create and the more I do, then I will get there. Or the more I have, then I will get there. And when we have these moments, like in your case, your exhaustion is really a byproduct of an energy output that has a strong why attached to it, but it is asking you to constantly hit gas pedal. So there really are not a lot of moments you're not parking your bike proverbially at any time through this process, because it's full time and the courses are moving at speed and you have to go along with them, or else you're going to miss the rest of the ride essentially, and you don't get to go to the destination at the end. And it's like, for myself entering this year, when you talk about the why, my like most simple thing when you drill it down to the importance of creating those micro steps to honor where I'm at is like, your body's stressed and it's speaking to you. That should matter. Your temple is really upset right now. And if you decide to tell it to shut the fuck up and keep going, like, you have things to do and I don't get to hit the brakes, but I'm like, your body is stressed and it's speaking to you and it's hitting the brakes for you because things are out of whack and it's telling you that. But how many times do we ignore that? And so even when I heard Laurie's message and heading into this episode and thinking about it, and I love that you mentioned the why, because sometimes it really is that simple, because this is my temple and this is where I live, and it's my responsibility to listen to the cues. And yes, and there's no way I'm going to be like, well, guess what? 2025, my hormones are out of whack. And so now I'm going to not get my work done again. But I'm sure as shit going to work to not allow my brain train to get out of control, so that I'm adding extra stress mentally by berating myself for being fucking tired. Like when you said sometimes you just want someone to hear I'm fucking tired. I texted Laurie the text I had sent earlier that day to my boyfriend where it just said, I'm so fucking tired. Because I just wanted someone to hear, like, and then it's funny, later in the day, true to form, I was like, sorry for being so complaining. And he actually was like, please don't apologize for that. Like, I feel honored that you do share with me. And I'm like, I'm not used to, like, I feel like an inconvenience, And that's the thing. Like, we have to stay so in tune with our minds and bodies because it knows what the fuck we need. Just like Laurie, to your point of your why, innately, your intuition is calling you forward, knowing that this investment in energy is so fucking worth it. And so that's an incredible driver. But if you weren't listening to that and truly put the connection and knew that, I think that you would be probably in another experience of burnout right now. Maybe, I know this isn't the fabric of you at all, but it would be very easy to quit. Because
it used to be the fabric of me. I was like, that used to be the fabric of me, without a doubt. That was
now, because you put
it was my biggest color.
But I was like, there is no quit in you. Like,
no.
And on top of that, people have to understand you are making all these actionable steps, and then there's real life that's happening around you at the same time. Like, I think that's our point, whether you're a parent, not parent, this, that. We don't really get to control that outer sphere around us. So we have to figure out how to navigate and move within what we've created in our lives at that time. But I'm like, it's just funny how much it really just comes down to that intuitive part of fucking listen.
Yeah. There's two things that you said that I really want to touch on. The first one is off of the part where you were like, there's no proverbial, like, I've hit happiness. And actually, these two kind of correlate, the 2 points I want to make. But I think the thing we're really looking for is fulfillment. Because when you feel fulfilled by what you're doing in this life, or where you're headed to some extent, if you have some purpose, if you're feeling filled with some meaning or purpose, even the hard times feel part of the fulfillment. Like yesterday, I was so exhausted and my nervous system, like I was just like, brrr, like jittering and I couldn't even think straight and all the things like I described. Had a really intense weekend. I got a ton done, but I had an intense weekend of homework and volunteer work where you're talking to people online about their really heavy stuff and da 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 da. And this is on the cusp of a really intense work week and school week too. So I was just like, oh my God, I'm headed into this week and this week's intense. And I am like on fumes. And I was just like, get to the forest, get to the forest, get to the forest. And as I was in the forest and it's snowing and it's this winter wonderland and barely anyone's around and the snow's making it so very quiet. And I was standing there and I was just letting the snow fall on my face. And I just started like laughing by myself in the forest. And I was laughing at the like absurdity of the human condition and all we put ourselves through. But I was also laughing at like, my God, I can't believe I'm still standing. And then like also so proud I was still standing and also like none of it matters, but all of it matters. And that you're just like, these trees have been here for how long and they're just doing their tree thing.
They're
and
so sobering.
They're so sober. And then they're feeding me and it was just this like out of body hilarity, gorgeous, beautiful moment that I was having because of the exhaustion. And because of the purpose,
love that
and
it sounds
because
like you went on a mushroom trip in the forest.
Yeah, but I was very sober.
I love that you attained it in pure sobriety because it was like everything you
on a Monday.
Like, I'm connected, and we're part of it, and the snow on my face, and
oh yeah, and it was
feeling.
That. What a good feeling, and that's because even when I'm in a state of exhaustion, or if I'm in a state of euphoria, or if I'm in a state of contentment, or I'm in a state of melancholy, or whatever it is, every day I'm putting something into practice in some component or another as to what feeds me in this life, what pulls me, and all those things. And so I've found a well-being. I was always the person that very much chased the happiness, chased the dopamine hit. And that shifted in my 30s. And I'm really shifting now into the 40s into really living well. And that looks some days like I am paranoid, but it's part of me learning how to navigate these intense, exhaustive states and where I am at, moving towards or continuing, because there's no end. There's no end to this. It doesn't end. Like I will do this work in some form or another till the day I'm no longer alive on the planet. And so it's not even that like when I get this, then I'll be fine. Because it's not even about that. Okay. It's going, how can I be as human as I can in this moment where I'm at with what I'm working with, give myself the best pieces I can to keep being a well person, but also within the context of where I'm at in this given moment and what I'm working with. And some days often days it looks so different than the others, but I'm no longer chasing for this happiness. And when I do have a very, very joyful, happy day, which actually comes often, like a whole day, start to finish, I've woken up and I've ended the day and I'm like, whoo, start to finish. And I have quite a few of those. But I'm just like, wow, fantastic. What a gift. But I'm definitely not banking on the fact I'm going to get necessarily another one tomorrow. I could do my best to create opportunity, but like that's not the human experience. It's to just, and that's what we do, right? That's where like, you should be doing more. You shouldn't be feeling this way. You shouldn't. You should be, that over there. And versus like, hey, this is where I'm at. How can I best offer myself whatever that looks like? Grace, a hand up, quiet spot, grit, tenacity, like what is the thing that I need in this given moment? And the second point I just make that also like goes along with that is like giving yourself permission to be a human. I give myself permission to fuck up. I give myself permission to disappoint people. I give myself permission to say the wrong thing. I give myself permission to look stupid in a crowd. I give myself permission to be the most unskilled in the group, at the table, in the room. I give myself permission to not care about that. I give myself permission to care so much about this. I give myself like,
I give myself permission to be wonderfully fucking weird.
I give myself permission to be fully as weird as the human that you individually are and am. And I think that's the part where when we are tired, we stop giving ourselves permission to anything. And then that's so much more exhausting.
Yes. I feel like you let in way too beautifully with the number one. I feel like that. It's how I'm tired. I'm like, what is it called when you like, I have so many Post-its over here. Mantras.
Mantras.
Like morning mantras. If I give
Morning
myself
mantras.
affirmations, that's the fucking word. This is the thing. I'm fucking tired.
Yeah. You retrieved that file though. Look at you. You retrieved that file. Got it out there.
I literally imagined the little dude in my brain that was just like it's in here somewhere. We have used this word.
Going through the file. Like with their little fingers moving them all a minute.
This is the thing. You like malfunction a little bit amongst the exhaustion.
You do.
Anyways, we still have singing talents. You're like, thank God.
Always.
Motivation.
Let's do a tired one. Motivation. Maintenance.
I don't yawn like that.
Sounded like a whale under the seas.
Actually, it's almost whale watching season, March.
It's true.
So good. All right.
Back on track.
Here we are. We talked a lot about micro steps in this episode, and I feel like one of the most actionable things that people can do right now if you're feeling very exhausted is going to be your digital detox. Not even, I know that we talked about it so much. Yeah.
Yes.
Like now more than fucking ever. It is by far the easiest thing for you to take off your plate because it is not necessary for you to be consuming it. And it is absolutely not necessary to be consuming it, as I feel the rates have amped up over the last couple of weeks, and rightfully so. I mean, in our, I guess it will be upcoming off-road, I kind of make an ignorant comment being like, my brain was mentally so incapacitated last year. I've really offlined my consumption so largely that I've gotten to the point of ignorance. And as I said in that, I don't wear that like a badge of honor. I can understand why it would be upsetting for people to even hear that, because they're kind of like, we're all fighting for something. And what the fuck are you doing over there? And I get you. I see you. I hear you. But the barrage of information and information that is constantly stressing you out, because it is stressful information that we're digesting. And I do have a theory, especially now going out, because I've had those experiences again where people's interactions are perhaps a little less friendly. People are a little bit more short. And I think vibrationally, we're lowering ourselves, which is also going to add to that exhaustive feeling this time of year. So I'm like, out of all the micro steps, because I know it's easy to hear what Laurie and I say, being like, take that moment for yourself or have that quiet drive. And if you're like, I don't have the luxury, maybe you have an eye roll moment, like, nice for you to say when I hit the pillow, but my partner snores like a log. Like, I don't know what your story is, but I can tell you for damn sure, if you're a listener, it is going to be the mass minority that does not indulge in any element of social media, which means it's the majority of you that do. And you can absolutely turn the dial down on your consumption. And now more than ever, that is so fucking important. That is quite literally a step I think 100% of you can take.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. One is going to be for people that are like, I can carve out a little time. The second one is for the people that are like, not going to help me. I can't carve out time. So let's talk to the first is that I got no time to carve out. Those thoughts that come along when you're in an exhaustive state, because we have a negativity bias to begin with. And so when we're at a more exhausted state, we're going to heavily swing to that side of things. When you can catch yourself going into judgmental thoughts about yourself or others or whatever, when you feel that like, or paranoia or whatever it is, a little exercise is like, even right now, if you kind of picture those thoughts, do it with me, of like something you're in your head and someone that's annoyed you or whatever. Picture them almost like bubbles coming up and then just pop. And then the next thought comes up just like, ooh, it's floating, pop. And just allowing your brain to not fight the thought, to not disagree with the thought, to not jump to a more, generous, necessary thought, or even reframe the thought. Sometimes that feels too big in that moment. And so just allowing there to be a disattachment to the thought by just pop, and you'll get another one almost instantly. But then your brain will actually become more like, oh, I'm just popping these thoughts, just like pop, versus, try it. It loosens the grip of those negative thoughts, if nothing else. For those
Can I
that
just
are like,
tell you what happened when I joined you? It's so stupid. Brains are so funny.
I know, they're
My
great, eh?
dude from the filing cabinet was like, "Oh no!" Not a bubble. Like,
He's trying to grab them and file them. He's like, no, I need to file those away.
Totally, like, I'm not even joking. I closed my eyes when you did it, and I was like, it was like, my dude, brains are so weird.
That is.
Anyways.
But that's also like tells something about, right? That our brain thinks that like these are important thoughts. I can't possibly.
True. Oh, that was a good metaphor, actually.
He's like, later. You don't pop. You don't pop.
Oh, that's funny. Sorry, your second one. I had to share that because I was
You just had
like,
therapy.
It was so cartoony and wonderful. It was great.
Yeah. But it does. It shows you how that's a part of our brain that wants to cling. Is that your little metaphor dude was trying to like, no, we can't. Like, I bet other people are like, what if I need that? What if I got to tell Sally something late? No, you don't. Pop. So this is even more so why it's a good exercise, right? Because we want to cling. For those of you that have a little bit more time, this is what I do in the limited time that I have. But I do have car rides that I am by myself. I do have when I do come home, I can carve out a half hour of quiet time. Is just go lay fucking quiet. It's super uncomfortable. Last night I put the little twinkle lights on, brought Marley up in bed with me, and I just laid quiet. And then I just put a little bit of instrumental music on and just like laid. And it was maybe 15 minutes. And I felt the volume go down on my nervous system and that exhaustive feeling tremendously so. And when I was in traffic, I just had the silence of the road. And I'm not a person that necessarily enjoys that. I usually have always a soundtrack to my life going at all times. But when I'm very exhausted, I understand enough about the nervous system that it just like your body and brain are like, can we just shut the fuck up? Can everybody just shut the fuck up? I think that's why in the city too, you get people are a little bit more agitated or ornery because they are just quite literally, like you think New Yorkers, they're going the sound and the this and the that and the noise and it's their nervous systems are just on fire. And
that's what
versus,
the Grinch was so Grinchy, all the noise,
all the rambuts and boombas and rinkets and dinkets.
That's exactly.
Noise. So if you're, so those are just two little tried and tested. And these aren't just like, oh, it's just a little thought or an opinion. These are like different, this goes around like theory of the brain and the body and how to work with yourself rather than against yourself. So yeah.
So before we get to our quote, you know that we've switched to a bi-weekly format and we're really excited because we've gotten into the groove despite the exhaustion of getting interviews done again. And our next episode will feature Christina Lambert. She joined us from North Georgia and holy fuck, it's by far the longest episode we've ever recorded and it wasn't enough time to even cover the lessons and the intensity of the story. Really quick Cole's notes, but Christina is a cult survivor. Her tale of escape essentially from that highly restrictive and controlling lifestyle that is something that she grew up within and then just escalated in the heart of her teen years is such a wild ride. It involves fate with a motorcycle that takes a dark turn, but also is the same turn that elevated and basically propelled her life into this whole incredibly inspiring path. But it is a must listen, a not to miss. And without a doubt, Laurie and I already said it's going to have to be a 2-parter down the line, because we know there were so many other lessons we could learn from Christina, but we're really excited to bring that to you. And also, if you are listening and you have an incredible story to share, or you know someone that you feel would be really beneficial for us to learn from in this community, please reach out to us. We do check out our DMs on Instagram. Despite the lack of consistency that we've had over time, we are there. And we're slowly getting our lives together in 2025. I mean, you guys have been on the ride. We're a bit janky. But
you're in a passion project with us, people.
Yeah.
Like, you're part of a passion
I always
project.
say, buckle up, but motorcycles don't have seatbelts. So that's why it's a little bit of a wild ride. Well, that leads us into quote time. And there's so many names that say that they said this. I'm going to go with Anne Lamott. Almost everything will work again if you unplug it for a few minutes, including you.
Oh, that's a great one.
Just a few. There's no way if you do a life audit, it could be your shower, you know? Just fucking take a few.
Take a beat. Take a beat. Okay. Mine is, if you get tired, learn to rest, but not quit. Unless you should quit, then quit.
Which will be another episode.
Which will be another episode
about quitting, actually. Things that we like when to
how
know
to know
quit.
when to quit. What are the signs to know to quit?
I need
you
to
heard
go
it
in
here,
my journal
folks.
Archives. Yeah, because that's
no
like
one's ever spoken to this, so tune in.
Not how we will. That's the beauty, folks. There's only one of you. You can do anything you set your mind to.
You and your affirmations, Jesus Christ, you're on it today.
My dude in the filing cabinet that popped the bubble. He's like, I'm fucking here.
He's like, I'm in. I've tapped in early this morning. He's like, it took me a minute to have my coffee, but I am fucking on.
That was like an off-road tangent on the back of this episode, and I love us for it.
That's what you get when we're tired. That's what you get. And you don't get upset. It's a fun one.
Not yet.
Unless you feel like you have to, and then you're human, and then go for it.
I thought we were rhyming. I thought that was the goal. I
can't wait to listen back to that. You and I were having two different experiences.
I did not understand the assignment, but I was really on board.
And I'm like, okay, you guys have a good day. Krissy's in the background, right?
Still going. Oh, well.
Well, that, my friends, is your motivation. That's your motivation, all right.
That'll help you through your stuff with me.
Want to help you. Peace be fucking with you.
You've just listened to the Motovation Podcast with your host, Krissy Vann, and me, Laurie Joy Kingwell.
Thanks for joining us along the ride. We've got new episodes dropping every Monday, and we're all about community. So follow us on Instagram at Motovation Podcast and visit our website at themotovation.com.
And in the meantime, tanks full and full throttle.